So in the last video we talked about busing and how we group collections of sounds together. But now we really want to start looking at those sounds themselves. How are we going to write music? Where is that data going to get stored? Well, it's going to get stored on these tracks here. We have, in our default template, we have a single track for the bass guitar, and that's going to get recorded here. We have one track for our vocals, which is there, one guitar line, 0 keyboard VSTs. We don't have any MIDI instruments loaded at all for synth sounds or keyboard sounds. And we have 2 drum tracks. It's very rare these days where I don't use both Groove Agent and Machine together, and it got to the stage where I thought I just want them in my default template. I want them there good to go from the very beginning. They're both empty. There's no drum in this Groove Agent. If I press play, there's no sound coming out. It's not doing anything. Because I use them in every project that I write, I figured I might as well just add them to my template. So if we look at our mixer, we can see that these 2 tracks, Groove Agent and Machine, both go to the rhythm master bus. So that's where we control individually the master output from both Groove Agent and Machine. In later times when we're further on writing the song, we'll eventually get to the stage where every single sound on these instruments is going to its own output, but that's not where we are at the moment. Like I say, we don't have any VST instruments at all for synthesizers, but it's very easy to create one. If we click this little plus button, so we want an instrument. Right, let's pick something you'd get with Cubase. So now you can see we've created an instance of the Pad Shop instrument, and here it is. You get some version of Pad Shop with Cubase, I'm pretty sure. It might not be this one, but you'll get something that works similarly. And so we can pick a sound. Let's see. That'll do. Very nice. So Pad Shop is a synthesizer. So it's a keyboard instrument. And so it gets the green keys color. It actually gave it to it by default. That's the default color for instruments in my standard template. But now we need to route it properly. If I open the mixer, you can see that Pad Shop is currently going to stereo out. So if I hit a key on the keyboard, it goes directly to the stereo output. I don't want it to go there. I want it to go to the keys master bus. And now you can see that I nearly pointed at something that you can't see there, but it's now outputting to the keys master bus, and the keys master bus is then outputting to the master bus, and the master bus is outputting to the stereo out. Sounds unnecessarily complicated, but first of all, believe me, it isn't. It's really simple to get your head around busing once you get the hang of it. Secondly, I operate a 0 bullshit policy when it comes to writing music. I don't do anything that isn't necessary, and this is what I consider to be the absolute minimum to have any kind of reasonable control over the songs that you write. So I heartily recommend that you at least use this much busing, and many people will use much more than this. So every VST instrument that you create, every keyboard instrument, route it to the keys master bus, and then it in turn is going over here. So now if I reduce the volume of the keys master bus, you don't hear anything because it's going through this channel. Similarly, there's the master bus, and finally the stereo out. Okay. We have one guitar track when we begin. Obviously, we're going to use many more. If we're writing a piece of music that has guitar or live instruments, we're going to have more than one track, but that's absolutely fine. We can create as many as we want. in future sessions, but for now we just start with one. And again, the guitar track routes to the guitar master bus, which then in turn goes to the master bus. So if I plug my guitar in and strum a chord, you'll see it come in on the guitar input. And if I have this track selected and record armed, then that's where the data will get stored. It'll get written into this track here. I can create as many of these as I want by duplicating or removing them. So it's really nice to have one. From that point onwards, I just duplicate. Here's my single vocal line, vocal track to start with. This comes in on a different input. I have my Focusrite has 4 jacks on the front of the panel. I have 2 the stereo guitar input and 1 vocal mono input. So that's what's coming in here. This is a mono track. That goes to the vocal master bus. And here's my one, again, mono track. So this is the left-hand side of my guitar's stereo input, and that behaves as the bass input. So when I'm recording bass, you don't want stereo bass typically. So I always record bass in mono. That goes to the bass master bus. Now, very often you won't have more than 1 or 2 bass tracks in a song. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's the only track feeding into the bass master bus. It's worth having. Very often what I will do later on, once I've written my bass line, is duplicate the track so that I've got 2 copies of the bass guitar and apply radically different EQs, one accentuating the bass, the low notes, the low frequencies, the second track accentuating the higher frequencies, and then mix those together into the bass master bus and then send them on from there. So it is worth having a bass master bus. I didn't for the longest time, but I do now. That new track that I've just created, because we duplicated it, it's already going to the bass master bus. It has the same output as the track that it was duplicated from. And this is the beauty of starting with one templated track that looks how you want it to look, and then from that point onwards duplicating those tracks to create extra ones for later on in the project. And that's it. Simple as that. 5 different sound types, each with their own master bus, each with tracks that feed ultimately into those master buses, color-coded for convenience, duplicatable. I can't think of the last time I wrote a song when I didn't use every one of these out of a template. So that's where I would suggest you start. Okay, that's the instrument tracks dealt with. Next video, this stuff up at the top. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.